We're back with our coverage of the event at Harford Mall. As we've seen, a package was planted by an unknown terrorist that released deadly sarin gas into the mall, overcoming and killing patrons and emergency responders and severely injuring many other shoppers. Fire and police teams arrived quickly and assessed the situation. Chief Tom Belford's team was among those first on the scene. Before the break, Chief Belford described the chaotic scene he encountered upon arrival. Chief, what actions did you take when you arrived at the scene?
Well, as I said, we were worried about our 3 guys who had gone in and hadn't come back out of the mall. I told my guys to suit up and start standard testing procedures. And we checked for oxygen level, carbon monoxide, and LEL, lower explosive limit. When they came up negative, and when we saw the medical team was down, we knew there was some fast-acting airborne hazard requiring level A, and we needed to withdraw. Level A is the highest level of protection emergency responders have, a fully encapsulated protective suit. Since we didn't know what we were dealing with, the situation requires a hazmat team with level A suits.
What happened next?
We set up emergency decon for the victims, established our control zones, and started to triage the folks who had managed to get out of the mall.
Chief, we now know that 3 paramedics died responding to this tragedy. Why did this happen?
The EMTs were responding to what they thought was a single medical emergency when they went in there. Sure, they maybe should have stopped to think about what the cause could have been, especially when they saw the multiple victims, but they wanted to get in there and save lives. If only they'd had more accurate information before they got there. For instance, if we'd only known sooner that there were multiple victims, the dispatcher probably could have warned the EMTs before they entered the mall.
If you had to do it over again, what would you have done differently?
Well, as we all know, hindsight is always 20/20. But one of the problems we had was the large number of victims, many of whom were terrified and in a real state of panic. We couldn't control them all initially. This led to problems as we tried to decon and treat them all, especially when the hazmat and medical units arrived. People were stumbling over each other. If I had to do it all over again, I'd have made sure that we moved the ambulatory people further away from the mall entrance so as not to interfere with the actions of the hazmat team and other response units.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes. I'd just like to say it was an extremely chaotic situation, and there is only a very brief opportunity to save someone who has received a lethal dose of nerve agent, or to prevent someone from receiving a lethal dose. It's possible that if we'd recognized the signs and symptoms immediately and been prepared to administer the proper antidote, then at least 2 of the individuals who died during medical treatment might have been saved.
Thank you, Chief Belford.
We have with us Chief Doug Johnson, who was in charge of the response to this terrorist attack. Chief Johnson, what happened next at the mall?
Well, Chief Tandy's hazmat team got there and were briefed by Chief Belford's company that the EMTs must have gone down from the effects of some sort of airborne hazard. So we weren't about to send in any more unprotected responders until we knew just what we were dealing with. We realized we had some sort of serious hazmat situation in there requiring level A protection. We began setting up our decon quarters and triage and preparing the hazmat team. And it takes time to do all this, and we don't send the hazmat team in until we have the ability to decon them whenever they have to exit. In the meantime, we proceeded to try to care for hundreds of people who had evacuated the mall, maintain control of the site, and identify requirements for handling this emergency. This was an extremely difficult situation that required an awful lot of response units to handle.
When we return, we'll continue our investigation. Chief Johnson will explain how he managed the complexities of responding to this terrible incident.